I'm Linda Mitchell. Hello. Thank you for being here tonight and for allowing me to share my memories with you. Tonight I'll be telling you about some of the highlights of my life with Bill Nelson. Bill Nelson was in my life for just about 20 years, and he's been gone longer than I knew him. But he's still a part of my life and in my thoughts all the time. He was tough and strong and determined and competitive, but he was also fun and funny. We first met in college at SMU, where we were both studying to be teachers. One of my early memories of Bill took place in a huge auditorium full of students who were preparing to do their student teaching. On the stage, they were calling out the various subjects we'd be teaching, and everyone for that subject had to raise our hands so that they could count us. Eventually, they got to French. French? French? No one raised his hand. Bill was networking and not paying attention. All of us who knew him yelled out together, "Bill!" Bill leaped to his feet, raised his arm in salute, and sang the French national anthem at the top of his lungs. We went on to student teach at the same time in Dallas ISD, and both of us were hired to teach full-time at the schools where we student taught. In those early years, we were part of an eclectic group of teaching friends, and we had lots of fun, with our get-togethers always including competitive games, such as scavenger hunts, charades, Vixen 5. By 1973, we were neighbors on Longview Street. He was still in the closet, and for some reason, I didn't have a clue. One day I was watching the news, and there was Bill, now the spokesman for the Dallas Gay Alliance. I began laughing, and I called my best girlfriend. She answered the phone laughing, and she was saying, "Can you believe Bill is gay?" As Bill became more active in the gay community, we briefly lost touch, and during that time, he found Terry Thibodeau. He bought a house in Vickery Place, and I followed him there in the fall of 1981, where I also bought a house. In 1982, I attended the founding meeting of the Vickery Place Neighborhood Association. When the sign-up list came around, I read all the names, and to my delight, I saw Bill's name on the list. I turned around, and there he was behind me. And with him was someone who looked just like him. Well, to me anyway. It was that clone time. I felt a stroke of jealousy, but I soon fell in love with Terry, and I was back in Bill's life in a big way. They put me to work on fundraisers, and I helped with Razzle Dazzle every year. I worked in the antique store, running the one on Belmont when they were traveling. I spent a lot of time in their Cedar Springs store, Crossroads Market. On Monday nights, when the Dallas Gay Alliance board meeting ended, Terry would call me and I'd meet them at the Bronx for dinner. For the rest of Terry's life, it seemed I ate dinner with them more often than not. They were my stand-in husbands. In the early 80s, Terry took me to dinner on Greenville Avenue. It was a pivotal moment in my life. Terry said to me, "Linda, Bill and you and I probably won't grow old together after all. This sickness that's killing gay men has probably already infected us, and we'll probably get sick and die, and you'll have to go on without us. Bill and I are going to be traveling a lot. We'd like for you to go with us. I'm telling you this now so you can decide how you'll live your life and how to set your priorities." And I did just that. I told my parents that I would not be paying them back anytime soon for that down payment on my house, and that I would be spending as much time as possible with Bill and Terry for as long as they had. And so began our travels, first on cruises with friends to the Caribbean and then on to the Mediterranean. And they generously booked cabins for the three of us, unless Bill's mom was also on the trip. Bill and Terry wanted to show their friends the city they loved so much, Paris. And so we went. Their love of travel was contagious, and they taught me how to travel and they gave me the wanderlust, and for that I'm grateful. I'm also so glad that I wrote very detailed journals of all of our trips together, and I will forever get to relive everything that was said and what we did and what we experienced. In 1986, Bill was elected president of Vickery Place. As a part of his agreement to serve, I agreed to be his vice president. Vickery Place Neighborhood Association was greatly enhanced by Bill's presidency and board membership. The bylaws of Vickery Place Neighborhood Association, based on the bylaws used for the Dallas Gay Alliance, are courtesy of Bill, who insisted we have a more structured framework for all aspects of association activities. It was also at his insistence that the newsletter was published in bigger issues, as it still is today. Near the end of his life, Bill continued to deliver that newsletter on his 6-block route. And by the way, I delivered that larger newsletter to my block a few days ago, and tonight, that organization is having their monthly meeting, still going strong after 30 years, thanks in part to Bill's early leadership. Bill spent a lot of time at Dallas City Hall working on issues that mattered to him. He represented Vickery Place on the board of the Dallas Homeowners League, and he worked hard for the correct land use in our neighborhood, supporting as well as opposing developers with success. Eventually, he decided to try to improve the system from within, and he ran twice unsuccessfully for Dallas City Council. He was the first openly gay candidate for Dallas City Council, but he did not run on gay issues. He was a strong neighborhood candidate with firm positions on a broad range of community issues. In the 1985 election, there was a runoff, and Bill threw his support to Lori Palmer, leading to her defeat of Paul Fielding in the runoff election. When he decided to run again in 1987, I was against it, but I didn't get a vote. When he told me he was running in spite of the resistance of a few of us who were close to him, I agreed to make every campaign appearance with him, and I kept my promise. He was tireless. My 31-year-old niece, then only 6 years old, absolutely adored Bill, and it is one of her life highlights that she rode in the convertible with him in the St. Patrick's Day parade during the 1987 campaign. She still speaks of him today, even though she was only 9 when he died. In the second election, Bill lost his bid for a citywide seat, but he captured 23,000 votes. The spring of 1987 was a terrible time. In April, Bill lost the election. Terry was diagnosed with Hodgkin's disease, and their store burned. But Bill did not know the meaning of the word defeat. We had cruised to the Caribbean in January, and in the summer of that year, we took our first Mediterranean cruise and visited Paris. Bill continued to work on neighborhood issues, gay rights, AIDS, and any issue that needed his expertise in making the world a better place. My last story about Bill is an embarrassing one for me. I had no idea how sick Bill was. He hid his suffering, and maybe I just didn't want to know because I was still grieving so much for Terry. One day I went over to his house where he was putting in a brick patio. He was sitting on the ground, digging out the dirt with a spoon and putting it into a child's tiny pail. When the pail was full, his mom, Jean, would go empty it for him and bring it back. I looked at the huge area set aside for his patio, and perhaps one of the most insensitive things I have ever said. I asked him, wouldn't it be easier with a shovel? He laid the spoon down and looked at me without disdain. He said, oh so gently, well, it would be easier with a shovel, but I can't lift a shovel, so I'm using a spoon. It's all I can do right now. And that was how Bill Nelson lived his life. He didn't get a whole life, only a half of one. But he used that half a life better than most people use a whole life. He made maximum use of what he could do right now. His limitless talents, energy, ideas, and knowledge, and his limited time on this earth. Bill was a great blessing in my life. I will never forget him or the lessons he taught me.